As of today, Israel has been attacking Iran unprovoked for 5 days. They've killed over 224 Iranians, including women and children. And Iran has responded with missiles of their own. Now, this is a quickly developing situation. So I'm joined today by Professor Sami Al Arian, the director of the Center of Islam and Global Affairs at Sabah ad-Din Zaim University, to uncover the facts and discuss the topic. Professor Sami, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Professor, as of now, what do we know about the current situation between Israel and Iran?
Well, what we know is that there was an ongoing negotiations between Iran and the United States. This is as a result of the withdrawal of the United States from the agreement, the accord that was signed back in 2015. During the first Trump administration, he withdrew in 2018 from that accord. And the reason he withdrew is because of the influence of the extremist Zionists and particularly Netanyahu. They didn't like it because it gave Iran, under the NPT agreement, the right to enrich uranium. This is a right that's given to every signatory of the NPT treaty, in which they will have the right to enrich up to a certain percentage for civilian, medical, and other civilian uses. And in that agreement, there was a 15-year in which Iran would be restricted. Every single aspect of its nuclear program would be under scrutiny, under inspection. That fissile material that went beyond the agreed upon percentage would be given to Russia. And everything was going according to plan until, of course, Trump abrupted it, halted it, stopped it, and started his campaign of what he calls maximum pressure. Then he lost in 2020. Then came Biden, and Biden could not actually engage in a meaningful negotiations for two reasons. One is because of the Zionist pressure, but also because he was a weak president, unable to engage into meaningful negotiations with the Republicans ganging up against him, obviously with the support of Netanyahu and his right-wing allies. Trump came to power in 2025, and he was determined to make sure that he can get an agreement, that he can extract an agreement from Iran in which he would deny them totally the right for enrichment. The right, again, I reiterate, that is in the NPT treaty. He did not say that outright, even though he said it throughout the campaign. He engaged in what is called direct, from his standpoint, negotiations, but it was actually indirect. There was a mediator, in Oman, in Muscat, Oman, the foreign minister, and they engaged in 5 sessions. Iran was party to these negotiations, and they were very open to the fact that they want to reach an agreement, and they have their own reasons. Now, if you go and study the history of the nuclear program in Iran, you will find that it was very unlikely that it will ever become weaponized for a simple reason. One, there is no evidence whatsoever. And on that, you have all the intelligence agencies around the world, including, I might add, not only the CIA, but all the American intelligence agencies. You have 16 of them. All of them agree that Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon. But also because there is a fatwa, an Islamic decree, in which the supreme leader issued this fatwa over 20 years ago, in which he says it's forbidden on the Islamic Republic to develop a nuclear weapon. Also, you will find in the history of Iran, Iran was among the first countries in the world, even before the Islamic Revolution, to call for a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East. It was signed back and in 1974, given to the United Nations by Iran and Egypt, and it has been confirmed every year ever since, over 50 years actually, of resolutions in the General Assembly. Every year it has been reiterated, it has been affirmed and confirmed that the whole world, with few exceptions, including the United States and Israel, because Israel actually is a possessor, Israel has nuclear weapons, and there is a history behind it also. Israel started acquiring nuclear weapons back in the 1960s, in the 1950s, and then in the 1960s, it was able to develop one. It's interesting to note, now we know this from historians who studied the years 1961 through 1963 during the Kennedy administration. President Kennedy was intent on stopping any kind of nuclear proliferation. And when he found some evidence from his intelligence agency, from the CIA, that Israel was developing a nuclear weapon, he demanded answers, he demanded transparency. And the prime minister at the time in Israel was Ben-Gurion, and he would send emissaries, and Ben-Gurion would try to resist, ignore, until he received a letter which was basically an ultimatum back in April 1963. In that letter, Kennedy said that he needs an answer by June. He needs a firm answer, a clear answer, whether or not, because they were denying that they were pursuing a nuclear weapon, whether or not they are developing a nuclear weapon in Dimona. One day before that response was supposed to be delivered to Kennedy's envoy, Ben-Gurion resigned. And when he resigned, people think that he resigned for that reason. He did not want to confront the United States, and he did not want to admit having one because he would have been under tremendous pressure to abandon that program. The successor of Ben-Gurion was Levi Eshkol, prime minister of Israel that came after Ben-Gurion. He tried to delay the response until he was also given another ultimatum in August. And guess what? By November, Kennedy was assassinated. Now, people ask whether there's a link between the assassination of President Kennedy and the development of nuclear weapons in Israel. Well, one of the most experts in the world, the most prominent experts in the world, his name is Martin Sandler, on Kennedy. He read every single page in the Kennedy archive. This is a person who devoted his whole life to study Kennedy, and he's authored so many books on Kennedy and the many things of the presidency of Kennedy. And he came this year with this conclusion. He says, and I'm quoting him, Mossad killed President Kennedy. And he has his own evidence that people can check and see whether or not it's credible. Many people now, many historians believe that is the case. So what I'm trying to show here is the hypocrisy of the international system of the United States, where you have one state that has been pursuing nuclear weapons, actually possess nuclear weapons, that is not party to the NPT, and no one holds it accountable. Not only that, but they actually cover and shield it, cover for it and shield it from any kind of accountability. And then it dictates to the rest of the world how they should treat other members who are actually signatories to the NPT and who actually call for a nuclear-free zone Middle East. This NPT treaty actually started in the late 60s, I believe in 68, and it was made permanent in 1995. But in 1995, the last country to sign was Egypt, because Egypt, despite its so-called peace treaty with Israel, always worried that this is a trump card in the arsenal of Israel that it can use at its leisure because no one is holding it accountable. So it did not want to sign, because that means that they do not have to renew their signatory. Once they sign it permanently, they are basically sunk in. So Egypt was the last holder in 1995, but the United States gave a pledge. It says, give us 5 years and we will bring Israel along, that Israel would be a signer to the NPT. Of course, that never happened. And of course, the United States again lied and covered for Israel. So what we have here is a state that is not signatory to the NPT, is not held accountable to the hundreds of nuclear heads and nuclear weapons that it has, and it's dictating to the whole world how they should treat a country that is actually in compliance with the NPT, signed the NPT, was among the first to be part of the NPT, has called for a nuclear freeze zone in the Middle East, and has an actually religious fatwa as an Islamic Republic never to have or establish or build or possess a nuclear weapon. Of course, people would say, but a fatwa can be changed. True, a fatwa can be changed, but as of now, that fatwa has not changed. That fatwa is still valid. The supreme leader of that country, who is the most prominent person in the leadership in the hierarchy of that country, still believes that a nuclear weapon is against Islamic ethics, Islamic morals. Now, when you look at how we got to where we are, going back to your question, Iran wanted to give guarantees that it will not build or possess a nuclear weapon. And they were in that phase. The Trump administration, through 5 rounds of negotiations, has relented in round 4, accepted in principle, in writing, that the Islamic Republic can have an enrichment program. They got stuck. Where would that enrichment program be? Would it be on Iranian soil, or would it be done outside? And of course, there is no reason why it shouldn't be done on Iranian soil, since it will be under the inspection and control of the international agency, the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency. And they were in the midst of these negotiations, and the Iranians were very open to certain controls, cameras and other kind of controls, as well as other technical controls. They were also open to the transfer of the current material that they have, which exceeded their civilian needs, to give further assurance and guarantees that there is no hidden plan to build a nuclear weapon. While they were having these negotiations, Israel attacked. And Israel did not attack simply the nuclear facilities. Israel went through a deceptive campaign in which the US president himself was a party to. And he admitted this, the following day when they attacked on Friday. He admitted that he knew all along about this, and that the Iranians did not heed his call, did not listen to him. They should have signed, as if Iran is just another banana republic in which the master will say to the slave, do this or do that. And the slave will say, of course, master, we will do what you said. This was not negotiations. He wanted dictation. He wanted to please his Zionist patrons, his Zionist benefactors, because that's what they signed up and made him president, that he has to accede to their demands. And their demands is to actually have a regime change in Tehran, in Iran. And if that fails, what they want is to strip Iran completely from its right to enrich uranium and to have a civilian nuclear program, which is guaranteed to all nations under the NPT. What happened? They went through this deceptive campaign. They not, as I said, they didn't go to target the nuclear program as they have asserted. They went to a policy of decapitation, meaning that they thought that they could have a total chaos, that they can have a total destabilization campaign, that they can have their agents in Iran kill as many of the leaders as possible, particularly military leaders in the army, in the Revolutionary Guards, and then try to foment a rebellion or some kind of demonstrations in which they can topple the agreement. This is, childish behavior, childish ideas will never work. Whoever thinks that this was a viable idea simply is ignorant of the history and the current situation in Iran, or is trying to fool the people around them because they have other plans. And I think that's what it is. Trump is not a person that is steeped in understanding the history and culture of the world. He is easily manipulated. He is a sociopath. He is a person who only thinks that he is the smartest person in the world, and whatever he thinks he can get with, and of course the people around him, feed him this narcissistic type of ideas and behavior. So what we have today is very dangerous situation. They thought that by killing these Iranian generals and Iranian scientists, 14 of them and counting, that they can shake the regime and make it either succumb, either surrender to the dictates of Trump, or perhaps even, with luck, get regime change by having a regime that would be under their control. Neither of these things happened. The Iranian regime quickly was able to assert itself, re-establish the command, the military command, in terms of all those generals that have been targets and were killed by Israel. And they immediately, in less than 24 hours, they were able to wage a punishing campaign that was directed towards the Zionist state. We've seen this. Hundreds of ballistic missiles have been targeting Israeli cities, Israeli industries, Israeli military installations, the airport, and other vital targets. And we are in a situation where we may have three different scenarios, because Israel did not expect that the Iranian regime would be able to quickly reassert itself and be proactive in its response and retaliation of the Israeli aggression. They were hoping that it will be totally weakened, and as it weakens, they will be able to either break up the country or have a regime change. Again, none of that happened. So one scenario is we're going to continue having this war of attrition. Now, we've seen the Israelis actually not allowing much of the press to know what happened in terms of the Iranian response. We're getting bits and pieces because of leaks here and there, while on the other side, you probably have a clearer picture. Some of the successes that Israel had was building a network of agents in Iran. We also understand that there were local establishment, local factories of drones and other military assets. And of course, that's a huge breach within the Iranian security apparatus. And the Iranians are trying to understand the extent of this. They were able to arrest dozens of people and close many factories. Whether or not they got all of them, we'll see. They assert that they have probably been able to shut down 80% of these factories and the agents. We will know soon whether that factory is whether that number is exaggerated or not. Iran has a history of what is called strategic patience. They don't rush the decisions, but we also have history behind us. We know, for example, that you can't take one episode or one incident and base the final result on it. If we were to do that, then if you look back at September or October of 1980, when Iraq invaded Iran, or you look back at the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, let's say August or September of 1982, or if you look at Afghanistan in October 2001, when the US invaded Afghanistan, or Iraq in April or May of 2003. Each one of these incidents, if you were to place the final outcome of the war, of the conflict, based on the information you knew on that date, you would have predicted each and every one of them wrong. Because what happened is that eventually Israel had to withdraw from Lebanon. The United States had to withdraw from Afghanistan, defeated, I might add, as well as Iraq. And we also know that Iraq had to also withdraw after it invaded Iran. So the assertion by Israel today on what's happening in the conflict is certainly exaggerated and certainly not final, because Iran has not surrendered. They have not raised the white flag. They are fighting fiercely. They are reorganizing themselves. We also have allies who are helping. For example, there are certain things that are known, certain things that may not be unknown. No, it may not be known in terms of international and regional players. The position of China, Russia, Pakistan, for example, are very supportive of Iran, and they are helping in different ways. We also know that Iran has been building to this moment for decades. No one can say for sure the state of the technology, because what they have been using for the past few years basically is older technology, and they still have other types of technology in which they can probably surprise the Zionist state and the Zionist regime when they start using this advanced weaponry, advanced rockets. We also know that Israel is losing fast its networks of agents inside Iran, which will make it more difficult to continue this campaign of destabilizing the country and assassinating its leaders. They still have some assets, but certainly what they have today is much less than what they had a few days ago. We're also unsure about what the Trump administration would do. So this takes us to the second scenario. So the first scenario is the scenario of the war of attrition, in which both sides will continue to bomb their respective countries. And the question becomes, who will cry first? Iran is a large country. Its area is 1,700,000 kilometers square. The state of Israel, if you exclude the West Bank and Gaza, is about 21,000 kilometers. It's very, very narrow, very, very small indeed. And therefore, in this area, in about 3 concentration population centers, there will be total chaos and easy targets. While in Iran, it's dispersed over a vast amount of land. You have a huge land mass. So that is an advantage for Iran and disadvantage for Israel. You also have the situation where if the country were to shut down, as they have, no transportation, no airports, no shipping, much of the industries are closed down, much of the businesses are closed, tourism is down, that's very difficult to sustain over a long period of time. And then add to that also that all these drones and missiles that Iran sends, particularly the ones which are not very advanced, they don't cost much, but Israel has to spend approximately hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes, according to the Hebrew press, about $300 million a day, trying to defend against them, and they are yet not very effective, because they are basically coming down, raining on these population centers in Haifa and Tel Aviv, in different parts of the state. So that's not also very much sustainable. So if the conflict is contained between the two sides, then I think over the long run, despite the fact that Israel claims that it has total control over Iranian space, that is disputed. I don't think we should take what Netanyahu claims at face value or believe him. He's a known liar, a genocidal liar, I might add. Then Iran would probably prevail, and they will not be able to bring down the regime or impact its nuclear program much, because Israel is unable on its own to destroy the nuclear facilities. Yes, it can get a few buildings here and there, but whether it's able to go deep into the ground, as most of these facilities are, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do. So the next scenario is for Israel to drag the US into this fight. And that's what Netanyahu has been doing. Let's remember that what Netanyahu has been doing is trying to bring the American administration, Trump in particular, very slowly into this fight. He convinced him that with these deceptive mechanisms, he would be able to bring Iran to the table, to the negotiating table, in which they will agree to the proposal given by Trump, which is not to allow any enrichment in Iran. Of course, that is just a pipe dream. That is just for Trump to believe that, that shows how little he knows about Iran, how little he knows about the issues, and tells you how much he's being manipulated, not only by Netanyahu, but by also his Zionist advisors. If he had believed this, obviously he does not qualify to be in that position as a decision maker, because he's about to make one of the, and probably has made it already, one of the most dangerous decisions in this country. He could not even defeat the Houthis. He had to withdraw. He spent $7 billion fighting ghosts. He didn't know how to fight the Houthis. To go now and try to fight Iran, that's going to be seriously very, very dangerous, because the consequences could be huge, massive. Just think of the fact, if this becomes a war in which the United States will try either to bomb the nuclear facilities or try to help Netanyahu in destabilizing the regime and go for a regime change, then Iran certainly is not going to surrender or accept this, and it will hit much of U.S. presence in the Middle East. Now, the United States has about 90,000 soldiers in dozens of U.S. bases, American bases, in about a dozen countries, perhaps as much as 60 or 65 bases. Now, most of these 90,000 personnel that the U.S. has are not combat troops. These are mainly logistical and support troops. So there will be no ground war. So what will be there, probably more of a bombing raids by some planes, perhaps even as much as Netanyahu wishes, B-2 and B-52, but these would be coming probably from Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, or coming all the way from England. And that will obviously be a painful campaign if Trump decides to do it. But in return, much of U.S. presence in the Middle East could be also within range of Iranian missiles. If Iran is about to be devastated, they're not going to go there accepting this. They will also unleash as much of their arsenal as possible. And that would be a betrayal of Trump to his base, mega base. He was elected based on the promise that he will not make the same mistakes like his predecessors have, whether in Afghanistan, in Iraq, or throughout the last 25 years. But now he is bringing them even a bigger target. And all that because of what? Because of the Zionists. Let's remember back in 2001, when General Wesley Clark, was visiting the Pentagon, he found that these neocons, who are Israel firsters, not America first, but Israel first, they were devising this plan in which they wanted to topple 7 regimes. They wanted, after Afghanistan, they want to go after Iraq, and then they want to go after Syria, Lebanon, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and ending with Iran. And of course, they couldn't get past Iraq, so that campaign never really got off the ground. But now, those Zionist, same voices, those Zionist first, Israel firsters, they're trying to embroil America again in a Middle East war in which it cannot win. Yes, it will devastate the country that's about to have war with, but it cannot win. The overall implication here, the consequence, is that for 25 years, the United States lost trillions and trillions of dollars. Some estimate at least 5 or 6, some even take it up to 10 or 12. All this money was wasted on forever wars. And the end result is China today is a very close rival to the United States. Just imagine if it took them that long with this failure, with that track record against Iraq, how would it be against Iran? And everybody knows that Iran is an ideological state, a state that has millions of people who believe in the state, who believe in the system, and who are willing to give up their lives for it. And if their back is to the wall, they would certainly go the whole 9 yards to make sure that the United States will never prevail. This is a Zionist war. It's not an American war, and it is not in the interest of the Americans. Certainly, the Iranians are sane enough and rational enough to understand this and get some kind of a deal that will preserve their rights. They are a proud nation, and they will never give up their rights. But what's happening here is that the Israelis are trying to push as hard as they can. Netanyahu is pushing, and he's calling all his assets in Washington, those who bankrolled Trump's campaign, Miriam Edelson and the other ones, Thiel and others who have given him millions and millions of dollars for this moment in order to push the Zionist agenda upon America. And of course, it will also certainly derail his domestic agenda in the United States. So if he decides to go to war, he can certainly fire the first shot, but by no means he will be able to dictate this, or will be able to contain this in a way in which he can know when to end this war, because the Iranians will not allow him to do so. That could even be worse, which is the third scenario, that this war does not even stop by Iran versus America and Israel, because the Iranians also have options, and some of these options would impact the whole world. Some people even call it the start of World War III. I don't subscribe to that, but it's a possibility, even though it might be a remote possibility. What if they go after Iranian oil facilities, which certainly will cripple Iranian oil facilities and Iranian income, but they can also go after the other oil facilities in the region, mostly all American allies. So Trump and Israel can certainly go after Iranian oil facilities, but in return, Iran could also go after the oil facilities in the region, which will impact the whole world. 21% of oil shipping and oil production, and perhaps as much as a third of the natural gas comes from this region, and they could actually impact it in a way that the price of oil is going to shoot up so high, the whole world would suffer and will certainly end up with severe recession, which will derail and end whatever agenda he has domestically. So it's a huge decision if he decides to go that route. They could also do it without having to bomb these facilities, by simply closing down the Strait of Hormuz. This is controlled by Iran. International law gives them the right to actually do this if they are being attacked. So the scope and scale by which this war could get out of hand and can impact global economic situation is huge. So if Trump is willing to go this route so he can please his Zionist benefactors, certainly he will pay a heavy price in terms of derailing his agenda, giving a free card to China to actually become much stronger than the United States, embroil the US in another meaningless war by which he can't win. Now, if you look at the Zionist state itself, you will find that their options also are very limited. They might get tactical win here and there, but over the long term, what they are trying to do, because they just expose themselves, what they're trying to do is to become the hegemon in the region. They change their military doctrine. They no longer employ, the deterrence, which is the primary element in their military doctrine, because that is no longer working. So they want to go after all the capabilities of all the countries in the region to make sure that they could never be surprised again, or caught off guard, or with their pants down. And so they go after Iran now, and they want to probably go after Egypt and Turkey and others. They will be in a neighborhood in which they are being despised by every single country and system, regardless of how friendly they had been with them. This is not a situation where it gives them comfort. Certainly, Israel was predicated on the fact that it is a country where you have Jewish majority and democratic system, and it is here to bring stability and peace and prosperity to the region. That's not what people are saying. After they saw what happened in Gaza with this genocidal campaign that's still ongoing for over 600 days, every single day where you have destruction and killing of babies and women and children, where they go after countries, even though these countries did not attack them and they did not posing any kind of danger. In fact, whatever concerns they had, that this could have been resolved diplomatically. They see what they are trying to do in West Bank and Gaza trying to expel as many Palestinians from the territories as possible, which will impact the whole region, not just the Palestinians. And they see all these extremists basically roaming around like wild animals, trying to take over and kill and settle like there are no restraints, no laws. They saw how the international system is totally impotent. They cannot enforce any law that has been built into the system for decades since World War II. I mean, the people are not stupid. Everyone in the world is saying this and concluding that if we are going to preserve any rule of law, any human decent behavior, we can't live in such environment. We cannot support what Israel is doing. It's becoming an outlaw state, a pariah state. We have people who have no regard whatsoever to any kind of decent human legal behavior, and therefore there will become a time when the whole world will say enough is enough, and they will have to ask for accountability. I think it will come from the International Criminal Court, it will come from the International Court of Justice, it will come from many governments around the world, it will come from the people who are fed up with this. And if their governments are not going to move in that direction, because they have been in the grip of the international Zionist agenda, then they will overthrow these governments and make sure that we're going to live in a much peaceful and decent world.
Professor Sami, thank you for your detailed analysis and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.